If there are two specs I love to see on a build sheet, it's straight sixes and diesels, and that's why I am so stoked about this 2020 GMC Sierra, because it's both and it's awesome. It used to be that if you wanted a diesel in your pickup truck, you had to step up to a heavy-duty one like a 3/4 ton or a 1 ton. And then GM dropped a diesel into the canyon in Colorado, which was great to see. Honestly, I love mid-sized trucks, and I think they do the trick for a lot of you out there, especially with a diesel engine, because they're so great on the highway, but they give you tons of towing power. But considering just how popular half-ton trucks like the Sierra are, it only made sense to stick diesels in these things too. GM is the last of the big three to do it though, which is interesting. FCA started the trend with the Ram 1500, and then Ford followed suit last year with the F-150. Finally, you can get a 3-liter diesel in the Sierra and the Silverado. And the best part about it is, unlike those V6s in the F-150 and Ram 1500, this thing is a straight 6 and it is absolutely fantastic. First of all, forget everything you think you know about diesel engines, especially if you haven't driven one in a while. They have come a long way over the years, and this might just be the best one yet. The great thing about straight sixes is that they are so smooth and balanced that this thing has all the low-end torque of a diesel too, means you've reached peak engine. It really doesn't get any better than this. This thing delivers power so well, yet it's nice and smooth and nice and quiet. When you get on the gas, you do get some of that familiar diesel sound, but it's nowhere near as bad as it used to be. And when you really get your foot into it, this thing roars almost like a V8 engine. It's absolutely fantastic, and I can't get enough of it. I might even go so far as to call this my favorite engine on the market today. It is that good. Now let's talk specifics. It's a 3-liter straight 6 with a big old turbo bolted to the side of it. It makes 277 horsepower, but that's not what makes this engine so special. It's the 460 pound-feet of torque that goes with it that makes this an absolute gem of an engine. All that torque kicks in at just 1500 RPM, so there's not too much turbo lag. Yes, it does take some time for this big snail to spool up, but once it does, this thing gets going pretty quickly. No, it's not quite as quick as the optional 6.2-liter V8 you can get in the Sierra, but considering it's a diesel, it's not bad at all. Like I said, this engine is incredibly smooth, and I love how much low-end grunt it's got. Once you start to roll onto the accelerator pedal, you can really feel that something special is about to happen. Now, the transmission it's mated to is a 10-speed automatic, and it is great. It does a great job of knowing what gear to be in and when. When you need to pass someone on the highway, it'll automatically kick down a gear or two very quickly, so it gets into the meaty part of that power band so you can get around slower traffic. The other nice thing about this transmission is that, unlike some gearboxes with that many gears on the market right now, this thing doesn't short shift as it gets up into those higher gears. But the cool thing is that when you're around town, it keeps the revs really low. Now, part of that is because it's a diesel, but at city speeds, this thing barely sniffs 1500 RPM, which means it's nice and quiet. Again, it betrays what you think you know about diesels in terms of how loud they are. But when you get back on the gas, it's ready to take off in a moment's notice. And since it stays so low in the rev range, this thing is insanely fuel efficient for a full-size truck. NRCan says it'll do about 9.9 liters per 100 kilometers combined, which is absolutely ridiculous, but I've been doing even better than that, and I've had it down to about 9.6 liters, including some trips into the city. It's incredible just how little fuel this thing sips. If you compare that to some V6 and V8 gas-powered models of the Sierra, it's 4 or 5 liters per 100 kilometers better, and it's hard to argue with that kind of efficiency. Honestly, I can't see myself buying a gas-powered truck like this now that you can get a diesel version. It is that good. The other thing is, this thing can tow and haul with the best of them. Now, the one I'm driving is a crew cab 4x4 model, so it's rated to pull about 9,000 pounds, and you can stuff about 2,000 pounds worth of stuff in the bed, which is about where I'd be comfortable in a truck like this. But apparently, a Sierra with the diesel engine can tow about 11,000 pounds, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like I said, I probably wouldn't tow anything that heavy with this truck, but it is nice to know that a good-sized camper trailer or a boat won't be a problem, even if you've got a bunch of your friends in the cab with you. The other thing to keep in mind is that this truck does come with a 323 rear axle ratio, so if you do plan on towing, you might want to swap that out for something higher. There is a maximum tow package available that does have a higher rear axle ratio, so that is something worth keeping in mind if you plan to buy one yourself. Okay, so we've talked about the utility outside, but let's talk about the utility inside. Now, because it's a crew cab, there's lots of room for people, but there's also tons of space for your stuff. You've got this massive center console, tons of cubbies inside, and 2 glove boxes. But this one also has optional seat back storage bins in the second row. It means you can keep stuff away from prying eyes if you're out for the day. Stash your more expensive items if you're worried about them going missing. The other nice thing about this cabin is that the layout is fantastic. Now, it's a truck. I love that it's got this column shifter because it keeps this center console free and clear for more room for your stuff. The layout of the buttons is also pretty good, though I will point out that they are very small and some of them are very clustered and hard to read at a glance. I find myself searching for commonly used functions that I would normally just be able to point and find without spending too much time with my eyes off the road. That especially goes for these buttons over here on the left side of the steering wheel. Now, this is where you get your 4x4 controls as well as your exterior bed lights and your tow haul mode. Again, we'll save some of that stuff for a later test, but I just find myself searching for the feature I'm looking for. I should be able to just find it, but I do have to spend a little bit more time looking for it. But like I said, otherwise the layout of this thing is great, and that goes for this infotainment system as well. It runs the latest version of GM's infotainment interface, and it is great. Not only does it look great, but it works really well too. It's really responsive and has really great refresh rates. There's also a built-in Wi-Fi hotspot that's standard, as well as Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. This version I'm driving is the Elevation Edition, so it doesn't have built-in nav, but if you have those cell phone mirroring functions, you don't need it, and I prefer using Google Maps anyway. Now, this is the Elevation trim, so not quite the bottom of the ladder, but pretty close. Luckily, GM Canada did add what's called a value pack, so you get things like heated front seats, a heated steering wheel, and a dual zone automatic climate control. That value pack also lets you choose these bucket seats up front instead of a bench seat with a folding center armrest. In terms of truck stuff, that value pack comes with a locking rear differential and a hitch with both types of connectors. The bed doesn't have a whole lot of gimmick to it, but there is built-in LED lights and about a dozen tie-downs. Now, this thing also has what's called a preferred package, so there's a spray-in bed liner as well as a power outlet back there. There's also a power locking tailgate that you can open from inside the cab, and there are those corner bumper steps so that if you've got a trailer hooked up and you can't access the center step, you can still get into the bed pretty easily. Even with those packages added, it's not the flashiest cabin around, but this is probably how I'd spec one of these trucks myself if I were in the market for one. The only thing is these seats aren't all that comfortable, and they have cloth upholstery instead of leather. The seats themselves are just kind of thin, and I don't like that they don't come with standard heat. But the cool thing is the optional heat is separated from heat on the back or the back and bottoms. Looking at it through a positive lens, no, this truck isn't going to pamper you, but it also feels like it's ready to do truck stuff, and you're probably not going to be upset when you get it dirty doing a bunch of different jobs. It's also the same thing with the way it drives. No, it's not glitzy and glamorous with air suspension or any kind of comfort features, but it is pretty comfortable overall. It does shudder and wallow a little bit over bumpy roads, and you can feel it through the steering rack, but again, it feels the way a truck used to, and that's the way a truck should, in my opinion. Some other trucks on the road, as great as they are just a little too car-like. This one still feels like a rough and tumble truck, but it's very usable. The steering is fantastic. I love just how heavy it is. There's not a whole lot of play on center, but at parking lot speeds, it's very light and very nimble. It makes it really easy to line up with a trailer or park in a parking spot with a car on either side of you. Now, you can get this Sierra in a rear-wheel drive layout, but if you're looking for some added peace of mind out on a light trail, or you've got a boat to drop into the water, a 4x4 like this one is the way to go, and the system is very easy to use. You access it through these buttons up here to the left of the steering wheel, and there's 2-high, 4-high, or 4-wheel drive automatic. It's all very simple and easy to use, and there's also an off-road mode that gives you some hill descent control and stuff like that, so if you're out on a light trail, the truck will help you out. I've been driving this Sierra for the better part of a week now, and I absolutely love it. Every now and then when I'm testing a vehicle, I just really feel that connection, like I could see myself behind the wheel owning one of my own. Which brings me to my only real beef with this truck, and that is the price. Now, a couple things to talk about first. Yes, I know there are always incentives on trucks, but since those fluctuate so much, I can only stick to the MSRP. The other thing to talk about is that yes, I know trucks are expensive nowadays. Now, a 4x4 crew cab version like this one starts at 52 grand, and that's a lot of money on its own. Then when you want to add the diesel engine, it's another 5 grand. Plus all the options on this one, it's a $68,000 truck before tax, and that is a hell of a lot of money. Yes, I know there's probably about 10 grand in incentives at your local GMC dealership, but even then it's a $58,000 truck, and that is hard to justify for something that doesn't even have advanced safety features or adaptive cruise control, let alone leather upholstery. It's just not a very great value proposition. But then again, if you've got a truck on your shopping list, you're probably budgeting that kind of money anyways. To recap, I love everything about this straight 6-cylinder engine, the roomy cabin, and the steering feel in this Sierra diesel. I don't like the overwhelming array of buttons inside, the uncomfortable seats, or how expensive it is. There's no way I'm buying a half-ton truck these days and not getting a diesel, and the one in the GMC Sierra is absolutely fantastic. I wish it wasn't so expensive, but that's what it takes to get into a new pickup these days. If I had to pull the trigger on one, I'd have a hard time picking anything other than this new Sierra.